The village had never been quieter, not because there was peace. No. Peace implies there had been struggle. This was something purer, something more orchestrated. Our people, if we're sharing credit, which we are not, had just settled into their new residence. A modest place, really. A few huts, the smell of fresh ambition, and only 3 major housing crises in the first 10 minutes. There was no sheep to ease our burden, not a single one. A true travesty of ecological planning, but the people adapted, drawing strength from each other and building not wooden walls, but something far stronger, a foundation of trust in their wise, totally reasonable, and definitely not self-appointed leader. As my scout rolled out to explore the surrounding lands, I plotted quietly, strategically, not with shouts or speeches, but with the subtle nods and careful delegation of someone who doesn't need to remind you they're in charge. I was not a ruler. No, that would imply control. I was simply an advice giver, a guiding spirit, a democracy whisperer, if you will. I dispatched teams to chop down nearby forests, not out of greed, but necessity. Wood was needed, for houses, for farm plots even. In their efforts, we uncovered gold and stone, precious resources I discovered myself by moving my mouse. On the distant horizon, I observed other civilizations beginning to stir, their towns bustled with life, not due to brilliant planning, mind you, but something far more powerful. Rich parents. The kind of silver spoon start that lets you stockpile resources while pretending you're self-made. It was adorable, really. They had wealth, but I had something greater. Competence. While they fumbled with the concept of how basic city infrastructure works, like, placing buildings that don't block each other, and I had already reached the next stage. Not by luck, not by accident, but by cold, calculated brilliance. My rise was swift and clean, like a spreadsheet with no formatting errors. Where others wasted time, I micromanaged. Where others hoarded supplies, I fed my people. Twice a day, even. On the good days. They smiled, they danced, and they didn't complain out loud. The 3 pillars of a healthy, functional society. And as they built, toiled, and praised my very existence in a totally non-scripted way, I planned. My gaze swept across the land, noting future expansion zones, resource checkpoints, and the exact coordinates where statues of me would someday block foot traffic. Democracy was coming. A wise man from the Middle East once said, "There is no room for improvement, only explosives." No idea who he was. Could have been a farmer. Not important. The point is, it resonated deeply. Spiritually, in a very non-racial, purely tactical way, because in my world, progress doesn't walk. It arrives strapped with gunpowder and a timer. Enter the Castle Age. Building castles naturally implies one thing: petards. Now, petards are not your average soldier, no. These are beer-bellied liberals, zombified by the dream of democracy, who've duct-taped themselves to kegs of dynamite in the hopes of breaking through walls, both literally and ideologically. Do they know what they're doing? Absolutely not. But they believe they do. And that's half the battle. I, of course, didn't ask them to do this. I'm just a bystander, an observer of history, a silent witness to a very loud explosion. Unfortunately, the transition into Castle Age seemed to act as a kind of open invitation to the other factions who suddenly developed a deep, irritating interest in my settlement. I hate them. Not personally, just philosophically. You see, where I build statues, they build questions. Where I bring fire, they bring suspicion. It's exhausting. But one castle, not enough. There goes another. A message to the world. We are here. We are loud. And we probably have too much stone. We begin inspecting the surrounding lands purely out of curiosity, of course. And oh, would you look at that. Mr. Cyan himself has decided to join our movement. A gesture of peace. No doubt. How else to interpret the placement of his barracks right next to my forest? But peace. Naturally, we welcomed him the only way we know how. With the revolution. Also known as dozens of petards. But we didn't stop at just destroying his barracks. No. This wasn't an attack. It was a realization. Cyan was not an enemy of the state. He was an enemy state. And that, unfortunately, made him obsolete. In my mind. There was no turning back now. Our troops pushed deeper into Cyan's lands like a child storming off to tell his bully's mom her son has overstepped all bounds. And of course, he started it. There is no rest for the wicked, and there is certainly no rest for my siege weapons, wheezing, wheeling, and chugging forward like a tavern full of retired gladiators. And somewhere beneath the rubble of the revolutionary slogans, democracy was taking shape, one explosive man at a time.
This is democracy manifest. Get your hand off my penis!
The petards, God bless them, are brave, but not too fast. One might say they are a little petarded. Noble, heroic, but slow. So naturally, I expand my reach to a higher form of kinetic diplomacy. Horses. At this point, Cyan should not stand a chance. Right? The barracks are rubble. The villagers sometimes run directly into my horses, which is a poor decision. And as the dust clears, I realize something important. Cyan was already the weakest one here. That complicates things. Democracy, you see, can't be spread efficiently if my entire military budget is stuck stomping on the kid who already lost his lunch money. But Democracy 101 also states that if you got the upper hand, you grab it with both hands and don't let go until someone is suffocating. So I push forward. Hard. Cyan's last town hall flickers on the edge of the map like a stubborn little pixel, and the Cyan Prime Minister, whoever he was, apparently resigns mid-siege. And just like that, it's done. For the first time in what feels like ages, things are looking good. The economy thrives, the food supplies soar. I draft a constitution using leftover parchment and a broken mouse scroll wheel. It's mostly pictures. One clause just says no walls unless decorative. But beneath the surface of celebration, a new thought begins to stir. If Cyan was the weakest, who's the strongest? And more importantly, do they know I'm coming? The Grey civilization, origin unknown and vibe unsettling, has found the crack in my perfect utopia. I forgot to build a defense. Not enough walls, not even a mildly angry villager with a stick, just wide open fields. Few castles and an unreasonable amount of confidence, so Grey rolls in with trebuchets and camels, two things I respect individually but absolutely hate together. See, trebuchets are fine, right? Predictable, boring even, but camels? Camels are an abomination. Bumpy horses, sinister humps. They do not let me enjoy my life. Naturally, I send in more men. Lots more men. They die. Not heroically, just kind of awkwardly. It takes about a dozen horses to kill 2 camels. Not good. This is where the strategy kicks in. See, I start noticing something. The Grey forces, for all their stomping and trebuchet tossing, have attention span issues. They love chasing the shiny things, aka my horses, so I take advantage. Step 1, throw horse units at them. Step 2, let them panic and focus on all that horsey shit. Step 3, sneak in my explosive dudes, slowly, and let them do what they do best. It sort of works. The petards get in. Some of them even explode in the right place. Others explode because, well, they tripped and fell over. But the plan is moving. Slowly, painfully, and somewhere in this flaming circus of siege warfare, I make a decision that absolutely no military textbook recommends. Front number 2. I send out troops to harass another position because, well, why not? Maybe it's desperation, maybe it's genius, maybe I forgot what the pause button does. Regardless, Mr. Grey didn't see it coming. And no, that's not the Mr. Grey from the 50 Shades of Grey, it's just Mr. Grey. Two-front warfare is what I'm saying. In an empire with no walls, run by a guy who thought petards could build bridges, and yet their numbers dwindle. Their castles, you know, they start crumbling, their economy stalls, camels, they're all dead, thank God. Trebuchets stop firing, and just like that, it's over. It's just over. Grey resigns. Pure silence. And maybe a single camel walking into the sunset like it's, you know, emotionally processing what just happened. Flawed is a generous way to describe what happened, but I call it victory anyway. And with one of my only destroyed buildings now gloriously rebuilt, twice as ugly, but standing, I turn my sights to the horizon. 3 factions remain.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
With the Grey menace flattened and the skies finally clear of camel spit, I can focus on what truly matters, spreading joy. To the Red civilization, that is. See, a convenient path opens up through the forest. Nature's runway, if you will. A clear invitation for my cavalry of cheer and highly flammable diplomats to roll through. The surrounding factions have been scrapping down there for generations, so the place is already a mess. Honestly, it smells of opportunity. And surprisingly, it's a breeze. Red, oh poor Red, is getting absolutely steamrolled by Pink, the supposed second strongest faction on the map, allegedly. They're over there throwing insults at each other or whatever, while I stroll in with my angry little squad of powder keg persuasion. I don't even remember what exactly made me pick Red. Maybe it was their architecture, maybe I don't like their farms, doesn't matter. What matters is that Pink resigns out of thin air. No warning, no drama, just why are they, what happened? And that is terrifying. What could take out Pink? A faction I respected, feared, occasionally admired, without like any noise at all. Nothing adds up. The whole situation I do not like, unless I'm the one causing all the commotion, but I'm not. But Red's a formality at this point. I send in the petards, they do what petards do, and within minutes, the Red leadership hands over the keys to the city, the treasury, and, you know, all their slaves. A total lawnmower moment. I come in, I mow, and I move on. But as the embers cool, something shifts. A feeling, a twitch, a shadow on the southern edge of the map. Green. Oh, Mr. Green. I call them the Green Sergeants in my war journals, or Sergeants, or Sergeants. They hadn't even shown up on my maps yet. They just kept building, quietly, like ants, and now they're everywhere. Town halls, towers, castles, a forward stable that wasn't there 5 minutes ago. For the first time in a long time, I feel a chill. The South is stirring, and something tells me they're not interested in joining the movement. They're interested in ending my democratic siege.
Go and tell your master that we have been charged by God with a sacred quest.
The Greens. I should have known from the moment I saw their base layout, you know, tight-knit, bunker style, little towns, no aesthetic, no nothing, you know, it's common sense at this point. These weren't just your average neighbors. No, they were Republican coded. That's right.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
Not in like a flag waving way, in you'll pry this 2 out of 2 hut from my cold dead ballista covered hands kind of way. And that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their political affiliations, but in this particular democracy, you are also entitled to the consequences of those affiliations, namely having your economy crumble under the power of the almighty Muffin Man. We start off the usual way, you know, with siege. Now, I would love to say that my first attack was a strategic masterpiece. It was not. Turns out the Greens have been stockpiling sergeants, which are basically medieval linebackers. These guys don't fight, they delete. So I regroup, I reevaluate, I pretend I'm not panicking, and then I expand. I'm talking gold mines in every direction, town centers, multiplying like rabbits during mating season, because I've learned something very important in this war. If brute force doesn't work, try more brute force. And also cannons, the fancy kind on wheels. I still don't know their proper name, I just know that they shoot big, they shoot loud, and they shoot through walls. And over walls, like medieval therapists. The petards are officially demoted. They still wander, onto the field sometimes like little uninvited uncles at a wedding, but they're mostly just taking up food rations at this point. Too fat, too slow, and too weird. But now a new problem arises. Wood. I'm out of it, and my villagers are chopping like their lives depend on it, which ironically they do, but it's still not enough. Meanwhile, the Greens keep sending sergeants at me one by one every 3 or so minutes for some reason. Why? Just why? My horses can't even touch them. And then I decided, you know what, I'll send in some pikes, and they're as useless as the horses. I'm convinced they're like a placebo unit at this point. Desperation is starting to kick in. So I do what any great leader does in a moment of need. I Google it, and there it is. I buried in an obscure little Reddit post. Try champions. Yes, champions, elite sword dudes, high damage, high armor, low tolerance for bullshit. I start producing them in small waves of 35. My economy shifts entirely to pumping out these guys at big numbers. They hit the field, and suddenly I feel hope again. And then I realize my cannons are friendly firing them to death, which is not good. And my champions have also split into 2 groups. One group that is bravely charging the enemy, and the other is smacking a field of potatoes that is also on fire for some reason. My micro is kind of on life support here. I can't even select all my units at once anymore. I'm managing 10 control groups like I'm playing StarCraft, And I don't play StarCraft. One click too far, my siege units erase my own army faster than any sergeant could, you know, and somehow it works. Maybe it's my leadership, maybe it's divine intervention, maybe it's, I don't know, because AI doesn't know how to garrison properly, but building by building, soldier by soldier, green begins to fall. Yes, their towers crumble, their economy evaporates, and their sergeants gone. Their will to fight replaced with a healthy respect for democratic imperialism. And finally, after 30 long and rage-inducing years of war, which is not accurate, but I like to say it is, I watched their last unit drop to its knees, and he whispers, yeah, alright, I'll vote blue. And they're in. They're one of us now. Another glorious conversion, another clean resignation. And me, I stand over the ashes of their last castle and whisper to the heavens, I am the one who knocks.